Mention the title Marvel Team Up to the average comics reader, and they'll think Spider-Man, and with good reason. Marvel Team Up was essentially the second monthly Spider-Man title, with the caveat of the web spinner sharing the bill every issue with another notable Marvel guest star. But Spidey wasn't the only hero to call the book his home. You see, Marvel felt that out of all the Fantastic Four, it was Johnny Storm, aka the Human Torch, who had the most spin-off potential in this title. Ironic considering the longevity of a little book called Marvel 2-in-1. But I digest. These seemingly forgotten Human Torch tales pose a question that we'll seek to answer this morning. At breakfast.
Breakfast!
The Human Torch was no Johnny-come-lately to the Marvel Team-Up title, co-starring in the first 3 issues alongside a familiar red and blue web spinner. Johnny dropped in again for another adventure with Spider-Man in issue 10, but a funny thing happened in issue 18. Johnny appeared alongside another altogether unexpected guest star, the Hulk. So where was Spidey? From what I understand, Marvel was spinning the popular character off into a giant-sized book and felt that 3 books featuring the hero might be a little too much. Funny to think about these days, where Spidey can see as many as half a dozen separate titles solicited in a single month, but it was a simpler time. However, Giant-Size Spider-Man was a quarterly publication with a new issue hitting the stands every 4 months. This was essentially leaving money on the table as far as Marvel was concerned, so Spidey continued to appear in Marvel Team Up, occasionally dropping out to allow Johnny a shot at headlining. Johnny starred in the book for a total of 6 issues, creating a sort of unofficial Human Torch comic. For fans of Johnny, it was a nice bonus alongside his regular appearances in the monthly Fantastic Four book, and a balm for the burn many felt when purchasing the actual Human Torch comic, which featured Silver Age reprints and not modern stories, as the covers appeared to depict. Johnny's first headlining gig is the aforementioned Marvel Team Up 18 from February of 1974. Written by Len Wein, with art by Gil Kane, Frank Giacoya, and Mike Esposito, the action starts with a bang, or more specifically, a bomb. Bopping around the Catskill Mountains, the Human Torch and pal Wyatt Wingfoot encounter a crashed tanker carrying a highly volatile payload. Burning fuel threatens to ignite the explosive cargo and devastate the surrounding area, but some quick thinking from our heroic duo not only saved the drivers, but contained the otherwise deadly blast to boot. Not only that, but Johnny even repairs the damage to the roadway with a judicious application of his flame powers. For all that, things are not well. It seems that the recent dissolution of Super Team/Family Unit the Fantastic Four has left Johnny feeling a bit out of sorts. Unfortunately, before Wyatt can suggest a wacky road trip to revive their flagging spirits, the Skybike's Contra-Energy alarm sounds, indicating big trouble on the horizon. Cut to an isolated cottage where your standard Marvel brand of mad science is going down. After the careful charging of this high-tech martini shaker, Dr. Paxton Pentecost launches into an overheated monologue, only to have his hammy performance interrupted by a sudden explosion. Hey, it's Blastar! Free from the device which contained him, the powerful Negative Zone native moves to slay Pentecost, but the Doc has anticipated such treachery and stops the brute in his tracks with a control device implanted in Blastar's brain. The Doc has revived the Hirsute brute for his own purposes, although he's good enough to fill newcomers in on the villain's story so far. After juicing the seemingly dead Blastar with periodic jolts of gamma rays, the big fella has finally woken up, just in time to exact Pentecost's revenge. The doc reveals a scale model of Faust, the world's first fully automated factory. Built of no less than adamantium alloy, the factory was meant to be an impenetrable, indestructible means of production for the people, but then a nefarious businessman stole the whole show out from under the doc's nose. Now Pentecost wants to see his besmirched dream destroyed, and Blastar is his agent of destruction. Elsewhere, no less than the Incredible Hulk himself unexpectedly drops from the cloudless New Jersey sky. Coming down on a building site, the Green Behemoth attempts to shout the construction crew away, but these guys have obviously never read a comic. Their attempts to drive the Hulk away only anger the creature, expressing his displeasure by throwing one bulldozer into another. This has the desired effect of scaring the crew off, but before the Hulk can use the porta-john, an intense buzzing in his head drives him from the site. Cut back to Pentecost and his hairy pal outside of the Faust facility. The doc directs his agent to attack, and Blastar unleashes one of his trademark bomb bursts to little effect. He redoubles his efforts, blasting the wall again and again until it finally topples. This takes, at best, a minute, calling into question the whole indestructible factory thing. It's then the Human Torch and Pal Wyatt make the scene to Blastar's consternation. The pair attack, and Blastar responds in kind, knocking Wyatt from the sky. Enraged, Johnny swoops down and lights his foe up in a wall of incinerating flame, but the youthful hero has forgotten such forces are as nothing to a living bomb burst. Repelled with enough force to snuff his flame, Johnny plummets helplessly to the ground, getting an unexpected save in the form of another one-time foe. However, this reunion is far from a lovin', with the Hulk promptly dropping Johnny in pursuit of the source of the persistent buzzing in his head. No dope, Johnny decides to use the sudden appearance of the gamma-powered beast to his advantage, telling Hulk to follow him back to the battle site. Speaking of, just then the plant's new owner, Mr. Blaine, and his guard show up to see about all the hubbub. Pentecost confronts his former partner, and it quickly becomes clear this issue isn't going to be resolved by mere words. Blastar stuns the guards, leaving Blaine at the mercy of Pentecost's masked minions. And, horror of horror, they're robots! This Pentecost guy either has seriously deep pockets or some great corporate sponsorship. I bet he has an endowment from the Chubb Group or something. Anyhoozle, Pentecost enters Faust with Blaine demanding Blastar destroy the building behind him. The brutish villain is more than happy to oblige, sensing liberation from his current master, but before he can really get going on the blastin', oh, you know who shows up. Hulk engages Blastar while Johnny races inside to see what's happening. Johnny, unaware of Pentecost's intent, mistakes the man for a friend, but the doc quickly shows his true stripes by turning his gun on Blaine. A quick blast of heat melts Pentecost's weapon, and the shock seemingly shakes him out of his addled mental state. But is it too late? Outside, Hulk and Blastar continue their battle. The two appear to be evenly matched, putting the entire world in jeopardy. It's only some quick thinking from Johnny that turns the tide. He has the Hulk encase Blastar within the adamantium scrap, creating an unbreakable prison which the Jade Giant then chucks into the ocean. The inexplicable buzz in Hulk's head stops then, and he gladly leaps off for greener pastures, so to speak. As for Johnny, he hits Blaine with a guilt trip before flying away, leaving the dream of Faust in rubble. That said, their fourth album is amazing. Johnny sat out the next few issues, returning in number 23 with no less of a guest star than the X-Men's own Iceman. This was a team-up fans had been clamoring for years, so off we go. Our issue begins with Spider-Man in a borrowed rocket on his way to Dracula's castle. Who says this isn't the Marvel age of transatlantic transit? Torch bids the webhead adieu, no doubt thrilled to have the book to himself again. Returning to the Baxter building, Johnny finds himself restless. You'd think the guy would want to kick back on the couch with a few beers, but that's not how this torch burns. Streaking off into the night, Johnny only gets a few blocks before being struck in the back of the head by a bolt of ice. Already cross, this sends the hot-headed teen off on a tear, and when he comes across the Iceman, well, you can imagine what happens. This is a Marvel comic after all, and two heroes fighting before teaming up is as essential to the formula of these stories as unsold copies of Valiant comics are to the production of meat substitutes. After rehashing the last issue for old Icy, Johnny lays into the kid again, but young Bobby Drake is no pushover and fights back in his own inimitable fashion. It quickly becomes clear neither side is about to back down, ratcheting up their attacks and giving fans what they've been waiting for over a decade. However, before things can get deadly, the other X-Men appear. Cyclops calls for an end to the conflict, but things have already gone too far, and it's only the judicious use of the mutant leader's eye blasts which finally stops the fight. Once the parties are talking, it quickly becomes clear Iceman couldn't be the one to attack Johnny earlier. Promising to meet up with his teammates at dawn, Iceman and the Torch set out to find their mutual foe. But who has both fire and ice-based powers? The pair soon find out as a jeweler's wall topples in a fiery cloud of snow. Torch and Iceman enter the building and, as luck would have it, the toppler is still inside. Unrecognizable in a metal suit, the thief attempts to escape, but the boys are feeling pretty pumped and drop him with a 1-2 combo. However, the fall has ruptured their foe's metal suit, leaving the strange invader in despair. He rends the remains from his body, revealing a startling sight. He's a being in flux, his top half inflamed while his lower half glistens with frost. Worse still, the effect is cyclical, the fire and ice quickly transposing across his tortured frame. So is the power of Equinox, the thermodynamic man. With that, the battle is on, the elemental pair grappling with a being in possession of both of their powers. Desperation gives Equinox the edge, and he clobbers the heroic duo. It's then the police make the scene, breaking Equinox's concentration. He easily knocks the two heroes aside and bounds off with whatever he's stolen from the jewelers, his foes, in hot pursuit. Riding a bus uptown, Equinox blasts back at the Torch and Iceman. All he wants to do is be left alone, but under the circumstances, that's simply not going to happen. Johnny and Bobby begin to fight their foe together rather than separately, and soon seem to gain the upper hand. When the heroes both blast Equinox with their powers at the same time, they catch him in a moment of flux, and the enigmatic villain explodes before their eyes. All that's left is what he'd attempted to steal, an atomic clock. So what the heck did he want that for? This question, along with Equinox's fate, is left open to explore another time, our issue ending with the promise of Spider-Man returning. Oh, come on, Marvel, you're giving the Torch a complex here. Johnny next appears in MTU 26, joining forces with the mighty Thor in The Fire This Time. Blazing footprints in the asphalt catch the attention of the passing Torch, who flies in to investigate. He follows them into a darkened alley and, upon lighting it up with his flame, discovers the creator of the prints. Before Johnny can react, he finds himself trapped in a quickly cooling cocoon of stone. It could only be the work of the Lava Man, who seems to be suffering from a serious persecution complex. That said, Johnny is no stranger to knee-jerk emotional reactions and reignites with furious intensity. Free of his bonds, the Torch lays into his foe with a haymaker, but this guy studied under Sonny Liston and gives as good as he gets, delivering a smashing blow that sends Johnny sprawling. It's then his molten foe says something that catches Johnny's interest, something about the fate of the world being at stake. As the world is where Johnny keeps his hot rods and girly magazines, our hero relents. Only, dang it, the Lava Man is dying, but maybe this kid can help. He needs to get word to the one called Thor. Soon enough, a flaming message appears in the sky above New York City, summoning the gold-tressed Asgardian. Riding in his cab, Don Blake sees the message and lights out, making for a nearby alleyway where he calls the Lightning. Transformed into Thor, he heads to the Statue of Liberty, always an excellent place for some comic action. Thor is surprised to see the Lava Man. After all, they last met in Avengers number 3. Turns out after Thor left LM and his brethren, the fellows made a daring attack on the Mole Man's forces, seizing one of his magnificent devices. Fearful of this new power, LM rebukes Jinku, the Lava Men's witch doctor, but Jinky betrays him in the end, leaving him for dead in the endless subterranean labyrinths of the underworld. Now it's up to Thor to stop Jinku and his forthcoming attack on the surface world. Using his hammer, Thor creates a temporal warp to Hawaii, certainly useful for those last-minute getaways. No one's going to keep that relationship fresh but you, lovers. And it's a hellfall of mythic proportions as the mountain Mauna Loa explodes in a volcanic wrath. Johnny attempts to use his powers to refuse the volcano's surface, but the youth lacks the raw juice to perform the task. Luckily, Thor is there and calls upon the storm to extinguish the bubbling rupture. Twigged by his hammer at some curious disruptions below the surface of the mountain, the two plunge into the underworld to discover the menace of the Lava Men. Having danced with these turkeys once before, Thor has no time for shenanigans and knocks their army out by the dozens. Johnny's there too, but instead of running interference for the Thunder God, his hot-dogging gets them both brought down by Jinku. Being the vindictive sort, Jinku has a staggered Johnny tossed into the lava pit. It's then we learn this whole deal was a setup to get to Thor's hammer, as it's the only thing powerful enough to drive the Mole Man's device. But remember that 1-minute limitation on the hammer being separated from Thor? Well, writer Len Wein didn't. Thor's hammer reverts to a normal cane. Surprised, Jinku is unable to react in time to stop our hero from reclaiming his cane and becoming Thor once more. He totals the Mole Man's machine, smacking down another load of lava men in the process. And Johnny has brought reinforcements. The two armies meet head-on, a staggering conflict that quickly draws to a close when Thor says, "Thou shalt cut the crap." Shut down the army's part, leaving our heroes to return to the surface world, unaware that they're pawns in a far greater conflict. Now, I'm not sure if the story was resolved or not, as Johnny next appears in Marvel Team-Up number 29, where he's paired with a certain cool exec with a heart of steel. Join us next time, high above lovely Detroit, Michigan, for a story that could only be called Beware the Coming of Infinitus. I'm Jason Mink, and I'll see you next Sunday at breakfast.